City Council drama comes alongside decisions regarding Duval County's personal attorney.
It's a concern of mine, and I want to get it resolved once and for all.
What Council President Ron Salem says about Randy DeFore's withdrawal from consideration to be General Counsel. Plus, the new budget about to be voted on. What's the future of the stadium downtown and the city's jail on This Week in Jacksonville? So glad you're here today. We're about 10 weeks into the new city council year and that long into council working with a new mayor in Jacksonville. Joining us this morning, City Council President Ron Salem. Dr. Salem, good to see you again. I appreciate making the time here. So 2 weeks ago, Mayor Deegan was here on the show and we talked about a variety of things, but I'm sure part of this conversation this morning will be some reflection on what she had to say here a couple of weeks ago. Let's start with the budget and where that stands in terms of the process.
The Finance Committee has finished their process, so we now have a balanced budget that will go to the full City Council on September 26. I have moved up that meeting with the approval of the City Council till 3 o'clock that day versus 5 because I'm anticipating amendments to that budget, and we have a lot of new council members.
That could be a long meeting, is that what I just heard?
It could be. So I wanted to give more time to go through that process. I'd rather not be there till midnight if we can avoid that. Yeah. I think it goes better when we finish earlier than that.
And you served on the Finance Committee. You were chairman of the Finance Committee at one point, right?
That is correct. I've served on finance all my 4 years on the council and chaired it once.
So one of the things that the mayor's office during this process, of course, the mayor, 2 weeks into her new administration, she had to submit the budget proposal. But then even after that, there was some lobbying or some, hey, here's why this is in my budget. And some of those things came down to some individual appointed positions, one of which was kind of created new. Let's talk about this. The mayor's office, when they announced appointments to her staff, and on top of the usual chief administrative officer or chief of staff, that kind of thing, she created this diversity or director of diversity and inclusion position and appointed Parvez Ahmed. Why wasn't that met favorably by City Council?
There was considerable discussion. Let me back up a second, Kent. We approved her budget, 3,800 positions in her budget. It came down to one position. There are members of the City Council that believe that position there's some overlap between that position and the Human Rights Commission. There were those that believe that position is better served in the Human Rights Commission, and I'm one of those. I think it's better to embed that position long-term in that area versus on the mayor's staff. I've met with Parvez Ahmed. I think he can do some good work for this community, but we were down to one position on a $1.7 billion budget. Vice President White offered the mayor a half a position, said, we'll fund it for 6 months, let him gather data, bring it back to us, and if we like it, we'll fund it for the rest of the year. The mayor turned that down. I hope she'll reconsider that offer so we can complete this budget.
So that particular position, if it was a different kind of job, maybe it wouldn't rise to this level, but lots of discussion here because it was about diversity and inclusion. Does Jacksonville have an issue with diversity? And I think we're all thinking from what just happened a few weeks ago and that the killing, the tragedy at that Dollar General store.
I believe the position can be useful, and I said that on the dais. My position was I think it's better in the Human Rights Commission versus on the mayor's staff. I think the vast majority of the council believe the position can be useful, and in order to accommodate those that weren't as enamored with it, we offered her a compromise of a half a position initially. And government and politics is the art of compromise, and I hope she'll reconsider that and take that offer.
Let's talk another kind of sticking point that's happened here. Randy DeFore was Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan's choice to be general counsel, and then Randy DeFore this week has taken her name out of consideration. The former city council member really had kind of come under fire by some other council members. We've heard, Council President saying, we've heard that some are saying she's difficult to work with, she wasn't expected to be confirmed by the council, and that all of you were waiting on the State Ethics Commission to see whether Randy DeFore could actually legally perform that role. Would you have voted for your former city council colleague there?
No. I said early on in the process that I would oppose Randy DeFore as the general counsel, and said even
without the ethics opinion, I was going to oppose her.
Why is that? She seems eminently qualified.
She has a great legal background, but the General Counsel is a lot more than just a legal background. They're managing that office and have to work very closely with the City Council. And Randy has had several episodes, many towards me, where she has, in a debate situation over an issue, she's attacked me at the dais, and I've seen her attack other people as well. So there were many of us that were just uncomfortable with her being in that role.
Part of DeFore's statement this past week said, "We must rise above politics to create a better environment for all of us." Is that true for you, or was this politically motivated somehow?
It was not politically motivated by me. I just don't. I run across this issue all the time in my corporate life, where a pharmacist may be a great pharmacist but won't make a good manager, and therefore they're not promoted. And this is a situation where I think you have a very good attorney but might not be successful managing 40-some-odd attorneys and working with the City Council.
So we've talked about budget, some of the positions that aren't happening right now, or at least the people going into those. Lots more still to talk about. So please stay with us, and then we're going to shift the focus a little bit. When we come back, we're going to ask City Council President Salem about the jail and possibly moving it, plus his view on renovating or replacing the football stadium for the Jaguars. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
And Jacksonville City Council President Ron Salem is with us this morning for another segment. So, Dr. Salem, two large and pretty pricey topics concerning downtown. Will the Duval pretrial detention facility, also known as the local jail, will that remain in this prime place right here on the St. Johns River, or do you think it's going to move?
Well, Ken, I'm very pleased with the process we've started. Michael Boylan is chairing a special committee on the jail. Yeah. They met on Thursday of this week. The process is moving forward. He set up several special subcommittees of that committee. We've got all sorts of people, judges, community leaders, all engaged in that. So I believe, hopefully in January, we will come back with a product that looks at location, mental health services, healthcare services, size of the jail, all those types of things, sort of teeing it up for an RFP.
So at this point, without an RFP or without some of those answers yet, what do you see as benefits and costs for potentially moving the jail?
Well, the jail is over 30 years old. I think it's past its useful life. One of the reasons I attack this issue is because it's been talked about for the last 4 or 5 years and nothing's happened. So I decided to take the bull by the horn and start a process. And I'm hopeful with these subcommittees that we will come out with a product where we look at all these issues and the community has a chance to weigh in, and then we can begin the process of an RFP, finding a location, and moving the jail.
All right, so let's talk about the other really, really high-priced project that could be happening downtown, and that's a new stadium for the Jaguars. You're telling me, hey, we've kind of engaged in that process. Did you guys have first meeting with the Jaguars this week? Is that right?
Well, the City Council, Kent, is sort of in the background right now. I felt it was important that we didn't get too many cooks in the kitchen, that I'm relying on the administration to negotiate this process. They've hired a private law firm. Mike Weinstein is leading it from the city as well, and they will negotiate this deal. And periodically, Mike and our attorney that the City Council hired, Michael Hugh, will come back to the council, update us on progress, inflection points in the negotiations, and then at the end of this, hopefully, the council has a good understanding of the final product, and we can vote on it fairly quickly and not reinvent the whole process at the end.
And we're hearing hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe $1 billion of city contribution. Where do you rank this whole project in terms of priorities for the city of Jacksonville?
Well, I personally think it's critical that we keep the Jaguars here, and that's going to require a renovated stadium. Now, we have to do it in a way that's economically sound,
And that's the purpose of hiring these outside negotiators that have done this in other cities, and I think will negotiate a fair deal for both parties.
Yeah, certainly something. A lot of people would share the thought, want to keep the Jaguars. A lot of people are saying, I don't want to pay that much. So we'll have to see as the process goes on. Before we wrap up our time here, I wanted to go back to what happened a few weeks ago, the racially motivated shooting, the killing of 3 people at that Dollar General store. You said this felt personal to you. Explain what your connection is with that community.
Well, interestingly, Kent, my father had a grocery store right near Edward Waters University from 1958 to 1973, and it was a full-service grocery store, produce, meat market, everything. And my brothers and I were down there frequently helping Dad to stock the shelves and those kinds of things. So we were there, and in addition to that, my kids, all 3 of them, went to James Weldon Johnson and Stanton. So we were down there all the time, and I felt like it was kind of a second neighborhood for me. So the fact that it happened so close to his store really hit me hard, in addition to the tragedy of losing 3 people.
You know, we had talked a little bit offline. Initially, you were invited to speak at a rally and weren't able to. What are the kinds of things you would have shared with our community?
Well, I would have shared just what I just said, how this hit me because of my relationship with that side of town and the fact that I've worked very closely with Councilwoman Pittman on several projects in that area.
Yeah. And going back to our conversation last segment, is this something where you see a path where Jacksonville can address this issue, the racial tensions that exist, and then come out in something like this terrible thing a few weeks ago?
Well, this particular person was just a racist, and it's hard to believe that someone would have those kind of thoughts.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It is very hard to comprehend that someone could hate someone that badly and take that kind of action. I hope as a community we can learn from that and move forward in ways that we prevent something like that from happening again.
Yeah. City Council President Ron Salem, thanks for the time today.
Thank you, Ken.
Right. Well, just ahead, Hunter Biden's indictment this week. We're joined by political analyst Rick Mullaney, so stay with us on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
And in this segment, Rick Mullaney, Sheriff Executive Director of the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, our News4JAX political analyst. So let's talk about this. Late in the week, Hunter Biden, the president's son, indicted on 3 gun-related charges. Let's talk about this, what those are, and then the impact of it.
Kent, pretty significant development, and keep in mind this may potentially be just the beginning. You may recall that the prior deal that fell apart involved tax-related charges, and the gun charge had been deferred. Now what you see is 3 gun-related charges, the indictment on 3 counts relating to guns. You may see some tax charges coming. There's also this possibility of a FARA charge, this Foreign Agent Registration Act, which you've seen against Paul Manafort and others. So what we saw this week may very well be the beginning, not the end, and it raises, Kent, a lot of questions. As the indictments come, and if they continue to come, does the president at some point, does a pardon begin to weigh with the president? Will there be a trial prior to the 2024 election? Could Hunter Biden potentially face jail charges, jail time? So it was a pretty significant development, something that started out as a minor drumbeat, has grown over time, and now you see the indictments this past week.
So seriously, some challenges for President Joe Biden. So he's campaigning for re-election, also dealing with some low approval numbers now, a congressional probe into him and his family, and part of that probe includes Hunter Biden. So Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, names that are connected in controversy. Democrats say nothing criminal, but now the Speaker of the House, a Republican, is saying, let's go forward with a potential for impeachment of the president.
Well, let me separate out the Hunter Biden charges, particularly the gun-related charges, which are certainly not related to the president, and the other charges that may come from the impeachment inquiry that the Speaker of the House said, let's go forward on this week. Under the House rules, you could either have a resolution or a vote, which is the customary practice to have a full vote of the House of Representatives to go forward with an impeachment inquiry, or the Speaker can do it on their own. And I think the reason that the Speaker, McCarthy, went forward on his own is that the votes, quite frankly, may not be there in the House. Some moderate Republicans who are not quite there yet. But we should distinguish between an impeachment, which is the actual formal charging of the president, that's one thing, and an impeachment inquiry, which is an investigation. Now,
is this like a grand jury investigation? Are there any similarities to other things we would see in the legal process?
I wouldn't call it really a grand jury investigation. It's sort of the standing committees of Congress have subpoena power, but when you do the impeachment inquiry, you get additional resources. It can expand the scope of the investigation. It becomes more significant. It is very historic. It's politically risky, for both sides, as to how this plays out and what happens before 2024. But in the end, I think there are a number of Republicans who felt, and this is another example of how the drumbeat started out faint and grew and grew and grew, to where now the speaker this week talked about the $20 million coming from foreign nationals to Hunter Biden and friends and family, talked about the whistleblowers that have come forward, talked about the text messages and the quotes from Hunter himself. Now, in the minds of some, it warrants this inquiry. In the minds of others, the proof really isn't there, not the direct proof tying in the president. Others want to go forward, but in the end, for the speaker, he's got a fraction of his party that really wanted this to go forward, and his hold on the speakership is somewhat tenuous. And I think that was a big factor in him deciding to go forward at this time.
Well, that is part of what I wanted to ask about Kevin McCarthy. Is he reacting to some of the pressures that are coming in from other parts of the Republican Party?
He would say no. My short answer is yes.
Seems like it.
What he has in the end, what we have is a slim margin for the Republicans in the House, a slim majority. That slim majority makes it challenging for the speaker. And to become speaker, which was challenging for him, he agreed that any single member could have a motion to vacate and oust him from his seat. They've been reluctant to do that. He's been pretty surprising in his ability to navigate this so far, but he's now under pressure. The Freedom Caucus, the right wing of the Republican Party, is pushing him on a number of fronts. One is this inquiry. They want this inquiry. The other is the budget. They want cuts, and they're willing to go forward potentially with a government shutdown. And there's this looming threat regarding his speakership. So it'll be interesting to watch in the weeks ahead, by the way, before September 30th, because you could have a shutdown sooner rather than later, to see how the speaker navigates this.
So let's come back maybe more local on the political front. One of the great things about having Rick Mullaney as our political analyst is so much institutional knowledge. You worked in City Hall in a variety of positions, but you were the general counsel for the consolidated government of Jacksonville and Duval County. So what's important in that role, general counsel? At the top of our show, we spoke with City Council President Ron Salem about that. What qualifies someone to do that job?
Well, first of all, Ken, it was a privilege to serve as general counsel. I served for 13 years, and the general counsel's office is the most unique public law office in the state of Florida. And the role of the general counsel is one of the more unique public law office roles in the state of Florida and in the country. Ed Austin used to say, there's a quote, that the general counsel's office is the glue that holds consolidated government together, because when we restructured the government back in 1968 and consolidated, one of the reforms was to reform legal services. And pre-1968, everybody had their own lawyer. Post-1968, everybody had the general counsel's office, which is great for a consolidated government and a municipal corporation, but can be a very challenging job. I personally consider it one of the great jobs in the city of Jacksonville and the state, but it's also a very challenging job. So what you had here in this appointment, an important appointment for the mayor. An incoming mayor, I think, has three really big appointments, more than that, but three big ones: the chief administrative officer, the chief financial officer, and the general counsel. And here the mayor appointed Randy DeFore, and that's what you've been talking about, is that appointment.
And Randy DeFore, I asked the council president about this, seems to have the bio, the resume says that she's got what it takes to do that role. He said there are other things involved other than being a good lawyer.
Well, on the qualification front, clearly she does. Let me talk about it in three buckets. One issue that got raised was there a legal issue that said she could not serve as general counsel? I'm of the legal opinion that there was no legal issue, that the statute involved did not relate to what she was doing, but in particular, under consolidated government, the general counsel is a part of what's known as central services, meaning they represent the municipal corporation, the consolidated government as a whole. They're not representing the mayor's office versus the city council. They're not lobbying the city council. They are the legal counsel. So on the legal issue, I think this was an appointment in which Randy DeFore could have served without limitation. In the second bucket, the question of integrity and work ethic, and I don't know anybody who doubts the integrity of Randy DeFore. She was courageous in the JEA investigation. As a council member, she was a fierce advocate for her district and with a very strong work work ethic. But as the council president hit, there's a third bucket, and it's important. The confirmation process is a process in which the city council rightfully and importantly has to have faith and confidence in a working relationship with the general counsel. I certainly know that myself, representing the city council. And here, that is something that they have to make the judgment call on. And that became one of the issues, the relationship issue in terms of access, confidence, and trust. And that's for council to decide.
Yeah, so 30 seconds or less, but that's the right role. That's how it's supposed to work. The mayor makes an appointment and council decides yes or no,
That's
right?
exactly. The confirmation process is an important process, and it's a legitimate process in addition to the appointment process.
Yeah. So a couple other topics that we talked about with the city council president, Jaguars stadium renovation, moving the jail, all things that Rick Mullaney will come back and we'll get your opinion on as we move closer to finding more details there. Thanks for the time today.
Thank you, Ken.
And if you're only joining me Sundays for This Week in Jacksonville, you're missing out. Be sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter. You go to news4jax.com/newsletters, and then you can click to sign up under This Week in Jacksonville. So next Sunday at this time, we're looking at a local effort called Together Against Hate. The organizers partnering to develop unity and understanding. And this was in the works before what happened in that terrible racially motivated shooting at the Dollar General store a few weeks ago. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4 and the CW17, and you can find us online at news4jax.com or streaming on News4JAX Plus.
See why every day more people are choosing News4JAX, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.